have you, I guess, are there any other examples beyond what you've already shared about how you've been able to amplify new media through other comms, through other comms channels, or even just, maybe talk us through an example of an op that you've had with Substack or a podcast, for example, and how it has created that halo effect, that I know I've heard you talk about before in terms of reaching the audiences in other places through that journalists' other platforms.
Hmm. Absolutely. I'm working with a creator agent. His name is Anish Lal. He's the founder of the Wishley Group, which is a talent agency focused on B2B creators. And he kind of understood this, emergence in 2020 of LinkedIn and B2B creators, and reached out to me in early September saying, okay, my business is really taking off. People are starting to talk about this. Now I'm ready to get my own press and publicity. Of course, naturally, everyone wants that, Inc., Fast Company, Forbes, New York Times type of article. And I said, what we have to do, because we have to, he was just getting the Wishley Group out there, and, we still had to build the website. We still had to get, the headshots. We had to, build the LinkedIn. I said, we're going to do kind of three things. One, we need to build your LinkedIn following, because just like any brand or any executive, if you're using LinkedIn but you don't have a following, you're talking to yourself. So if people are wondering why the performance of their content is not going well, it has nothing to do with the content. It has everything to do with like the algorithm, right? You have not built a following. So take a look at your following, take a look at your connections. Obviously the copy, needs to be good. It needs to be relevant. They say hashtags are dead. I go back and forth because I do actually think hashtags can insert you into conversations. And I think people who are still searching for something specific when using a hashtag can actually come upon your content. So I'm not on the hashtags is dead bandwagon. I actually think they still serve some value. But we first built his LinkedIn following. And then we talked about kind of the cadence, the content, the cultural cues that we were going to use. Then we have to understand like the timing, what days, what times, how are we engaging? I'll often have my clients post on LinkedIn, and then I will tell them, do not engage for the first 4 to 6 hours. Then you can like it, and then another like 4 to 6 hours or the next day you can comment on it, because every time you like or comment, it brings it back up to the feed. So if you do all of your engagement in one fell swoop, you're not actually getting as much latitude that you could be getting. So I like, let the content post and ghost, let your content
Hmm.
breathe, come back, give it a like, brings it back up onto the feed, and then start engaging with the conversation. You'll notice you'll actually get like, at least a 20% higher rate and turnout on the content. The second thing we did was I said, we need to create some visibility. So we actually worked and secured several podcasts. Again, LinkedIn centric podcasts where they're going to create a lockup that's got his face, his name, with the media
Yeah.
logo that he's going to be able to put out there. It gives him that brand visibility. It also gives him that credibility. Doesn't even matter if it's Inc. or Forbes. You've got your name, your title, your logo, all of that in a lockup. People love to share that. So we created this groundswell where I think there was like 4 different podcasts, started coming up on LinkedIn, pitching him constantly. Hey, sounds interesting. We'll keep him on file. We'll keep him in mind. And I would say, Anish, this is really big because we're getting your name out there. People are starting to take notice. And then lo and behold, we got a really good bite with Net Influencer, which is a great trade outlet focused on creators. Perfect for him, right in his sweet spot, hits his audience, attracts the people that he's trying to attract. And they did a fantastic article on him, which of course we posted and we amplified. And then the media just started coming in. We secured a live sit down with Bloomberg, creator
Amazing.
economy reporter. We started getting, more interest coming back from Inc. We had Digiday coming to us asking, us questions. And I said, I'm not going to tell you I told you so, but I told you so. We created that, following and user base and content on social. We then created that groundswell with podcasts and Substacks and non-traditional newsletters. We got a big break in a trade publication, and then the big boys start coming. Because again, this reporter at Bloomberg, follows net influencers. She's following all the
Right.
creator economy reporters. So what I always say to clients is like, create that groundswell, create that surround sound. People are seeing it. Traditional journalists are absorbing and listening and watching, and they're getting ideas from that. And
Mm,
oftentimes, too, even in a traditional newsletter, they'll link to a Substack, or they'll say, they always have a section, what I'm reading, what's on my radar. A lot of those are Substacks. And
right.
it's gonna become more and more as traditional journalists. Again, Alex Conrad being one of the latest to come in, big time senior editor at Forbes for over a decade.
Right.
Now has his own media company. And the other thing that you're seeing is, unfortunate or fortunate in some regards, media acquisitions. You're seeing the rise of media companies that are absorbing. So think about the skim. 10 years ago, I would have said, oh, the skim and Business Insiders, tech breakfast, 10 things in tech you need to know. And, all these newsletters that were giving you sound bites and snackable sizes of content. They just got acquired last week by Ziff Davis.
Hmm.
Who obviously is being smart about this news aggregate and how they're going to consume. TechCrunch, not as great news. I love TechCrunch. Obviously part of the whole larger group, but media firm Regent acquired them, and let's see what's going to happen, because oftentimes media is best when it's doing its own thing. It's its own publication. They've got their niche. They've got their own style. They've got their own brand voice. Sometimes when it becomes too big of a conglomerate, you kind of lose the interest. We've seen that happen too. But you're seeing these media startups and these media firms and these media investments because people are understanding that media is changing. They're understanding that
Hmm.
consumption is changing. They're understanding that honestly, it went from brand generated content to UGC, user generated content. Employee generated content is going to be massive. And that's a good and a bad thing. It's a double edged sword, right? You've got employee generated content. They're ambassadors. They know the mission. They know the message. They're out there. They're excited. They're posting photos. But on the other side, right, like you're getting a truncated version of what happened at the all hands meeting. You're getting a biased opinion or view from someone who just happens to talk louder, or it's making its way from Blind or Reddit or Glassdoor onto LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And you have this stage and platform, and you have all of the video, all of the caption, all of the LinkedIn article, all of the editing capabilities to really make this a multimedia moment. So it's
Right.
almost akin to, everyone says, oh, I'm going to go to press with that. You have your own free press with LinkedIn,
Right.
TikTok, any of those, right? It's giving you that platform to share that message. And again, if it's newsworthy, if it's compelling, if it creates some tension, you're going to catch those eyeballs.
Mm,
Internal comms have always respected internal comms. Their role is going to be more critical than ever. We used to, always say it's one sheet of music. You would always write an internal memo knowing that this can go external, or you were intentional and leaked the
hmm.
external memo. But now you're at a point where everything's being, shared in, summarized, half baked, half written messages where you're actually creating a little bit of misinformation. You might be losing control of the message. You might be losing control of the culture perception. Layoffs, hate to bring anything negative into the conversation, but layoffs. Oftentimes there's a layoff and it's okay, sign the severance agreement and don't talk about it. People are immediately going to LinkedIn and sharing their layoff story. And my God, the press are eating it up, and they're
Right.
asking for a statement. The headline's coming out before they even get a statement. They're breaking news on these social channels. So
Right.
internal comms, I mean, they've always had such an important, critical, and difficult job. But as we see more employee generated content and user generated content, it's even more important for that internal comms transparency, that mining the culture and making sure you're addressing, the issues and the executives are talking about it before they find a forum to talk about it elsewhere.
Right. So many interesting points that you just
Yeah.
made there. I'm gonna pick through a few of them, Meredith. I mean, one of the early points you made there was around sort of the groundswell, from LinkedIn to Substack to the trades to, maybe those big traditional outlets like the Wall Street Journal and those guys. And back in the day, right, we used to, if we were pitching a new client, pitching new business, we would say, hey, you've got to hit the trades before you can hit. Like, we know you really want to get into the Wall Street Journals and the tech crunches, but you've got to, pay your dues and really win with the trades before you can get there. And now it feels like has just been many more layers, right, that have been added. But in a way, we don't want to think of, those big publications like the Wall Street Journal being the only prize, right? It's almost
Right.
like there's more prizes along the way,
Right.
like through LinkedIn, because to your earlier point, we have perhaps more niche audiences there or more engaged audiences that we don't want to ignore. So you could look at it, I suppose, in two ways, right? It's harder to break some of those big guys, but equally, like, there's a much more opportunity for PRs than there were before with all of these new media outlets and channels like LinkedIn that we can use, right? So
Absolutely.
it's I guess it's just the way we choose to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, I have one final question for you, Meredith, and then we will let you go. I guess any final thoughts on where you see new media going? I mean, when are we going to stop calling it new media? I know they've been labeled this, even though podcasts have been around for ages.
Right.
I mean, obviously, podcast is just one part of it. You've talked about the importance of podcasts. Um, but where do you see it going? Do you think we're going to see more acquisitions like we've seen with the Skim? What do you think? What's your take?
Yeah, I do think you'll see more acquisitions, more integrations, of traditional publications. I think you'll see brands working with journalists or freelancers as guest contributors, like even for their newsroom, right? Doing a newsroom post or a guest contributor. Again, that's not new. I did that 10 years ago. But more and more as the newsrooms are getting thinner and people are becoming, Substack experts or podcasters or, really freelancing, brands are going to be able to tap into their journalistic background, their significant following and great reputation to have quality coverage written. You're definitely going to see more pay for play, 100%. So much of the media out there is paid for now too, and I don't
Hmm.
think we have enough time in the podcast to address it, but there's a lot of folks out there sharing the coverage and I'm like, you paid for that. It's a sponsored post, or you're part of the Forbes Technology Council, or you're a member of Fortune, right? Or the Wall Street Journal Council. So, that can be very misleading when someone's like, well, I want to be in Fortune or I want to be in the Wall Street Journal. Like, read beyond the fold, right? Because like that is a paid opportunity and that is okay. I
Right.
do believe paid opportunities are important. The marketing team will always have New York Times in their brand campaign mock-up. Hardly will you ever get New York Times for your brand campaign, but you could if you bought an ad in the New York Times, and people are starting to do that. And I think also too, you're going to just see more untraditional media. You're going to see, beyond influence podcast, outlets like Authority Magazine, moment Substacks like Baggable, or User
Hmm.
Magazine. You're going to see more of it and you're going to see more video. Get ready to see more video, across LinkedIn. Again, I would say Walmart years ago used to, and they still do it, do Doug McMillan, CEO, sitting on his desk in Bentonville, Arkansas, thanking associates for another great quarter. It was such a heartfelt and nice message and such a great way to share the results and acknowledge it. So many people have taken out of their playbook and are starting to do that. I think, I just saw eBay most recently, did a video. I know that Elf Beauty and others are working to create more captivating sizzle reels and edit videos and editing, for things like earnings, which traditionally have only been like a press release over the wire.
Right.
Now, another one, Richard Dixon, Gap. Love what he's doing there. And he's been fantastic keeping us all excited on this comeback journey on LinkedIn. not just sharing photos of him in offices, but literally sharing videos, doing deep dives, talking to the audience. You really feel like he's bringing you along on the journey. So you are 100% going to see more video. You're going to see more owned video. That means LinkedIn. That means On Their Newsroom. That means like Clarity and Seeking Clarity podcasts. You're going to see agencies coming up with their own podcasts and their own newsletter, because this owned media dichotomy is going to be so critical, because you own the message, you own the voice, you own the platform. You're going to build that platform, and you're going to be able to put yourself, your business, your employees, your clients on that platform. It's going to aid with retention. It's going to aid with brand awareness. It's going to aid with creating a culture. And then eventually there's going to be monetary benefits that come from that. People are going to want to sponsor it. The advertising is going to come. So this new media is no longer going to be new. It's going to be the norm.
Love that. What a great way to end. Well, Meredith, thank you so much for joining us on Seeking Clarity. And if anyone wants to contact you, do you want to just quickly share where they can find you?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. All right. Well, thank you so much, Meredith.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.